Okay, I'm going to read the checklist to ensure meetings are compliant with the right to know law during the state of emergency. As chair of the Sanborn Regional School District's Budget Committee, I find that due to the state of the emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to the executive order 2020, additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for the electronic meeting. All members of the Sanborn Regional School District's Budget Committee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting through dialing the following phone number. All right, so it's going to be 1-646-558-8656. Meeting ID number is 966-0893-3874. Okay. And Dan, is that password still the same?
Yeah, it should just be the meeting ID and the phone number.
All right. Okay. Or by clicking on the following website, www.youtube.com. Oops, where did that go? Sorry, folks. I switched to a different. All right. So you can go to youtube.com/C/SRSD meeting videos. The phone number is 1-646-558-8656. And the meeting ID number is 966-0893-3874. I hope I did not confuse anybody with that.
I hate the legalese.
And it's all right on the homepage for the website. So we post it prominently for everyone so it's easy to find.
All right. And B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom or telephonically. Instructions have also been provided in the website of the Sanborn Regional School District at www.sau17.org. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 978-482-7394 or email helpdesk@sau17.net. D, adjourning the meeting. If the public is unable to access the meeting, in the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. All right. So now we're going to start with taking a roll call of the attendance, where each member states their presence. And please also state whether or not there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So we'll start up in the upper left-hand corner of my screen with Annie.
Hi, Annie Collier. I am here at home and I'm alone.
Okay. I, James McCarthy, am home in my home office alone. There may be some pass by, but they are not going to be participating in a meeting. Matthew?
Matthew Angel. I'm at my house and I'm in a room by myself.
Okay. Vanessa?
You're on mute, Vanessa.
You're on mute.
There you
Sorry.
go.
Vanessa Matias. I'm at home. I am by myself and hopefully nobody walks by.
Okay. Thomas.
You're muted too.
You're muted.
Sorry, Tom Ambrose, superintendent. I'm at home in my office. There's no one else here, but there may be a passing kitty at any time because they tend to show up randomly.
All right. Tammy.
Tammy Mahoney, I'm at home in a room by myself.
Okay. Mary.
By myself, but there are other people here who might walk by, or dogs that might run, a dog that might run through.
Okay. Rick, you're on mute. There you go.
Rick Edelman at home in a room by myself.
Christine.
Christine Kosmitsky, and I am here home alone.
Maura, you're on mute.
Maura Basha, I'm at home right now. I do have family members in the home with me right now.
Okay. All right. I think that covers everybody. And now we will salute the flag. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the United
of the
States
United
of
States
America
of America,
and to the republic
the republic for which it stands,
one nation
under God,
Indivisible,
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 liberty and
with
justice.
liberty
justice
and
for
justice
all.
for all.
That's always such a cacophony over Zoom.
Yes, it is. Oh, great. I need 1 minute. I forgot some paperwork down in my other office.
Trying to think of something funny or fun to say, but I can't, so I'm sorry.
We count on you for that, Tom.
I know I try sometimes, but I'm a little fried right now. Maura, can you tell us, I'm curious, is that flag truly a vintage flag? Oh, she's muted.
You're muted.
Sorry. My dad gave it to my brother in 1976 when they came out with was it the bicentennial? So, yeah.
Okay.
So it's an original bicentennial flag.
All right, I'm back. Can't run the meeting without the agenda. Okay, so all members are present, none excused. So, do we have a motion to approve the minutes, or is there any discussion for the minutes from November 19th?
Move to approve.
I second.
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Roll call vote. Annie?
Aye.
Aye. Vanessa?
Aye.
Tammy?
Aye.
Mary? Didn't hear that, Annie. I mean, Mary.
Aye.
Okay.
Yes.
Rick?
Aye.
Christine?
Aye.
Maura?
Aye.
All right. All right, so next would be the school board report from Tammy Mahoney. How are you? Anything to share?
Good, how are you? Yes, well, the school board met last night and we deliberated on the budget. So I will give you that information. We started superintendent's proposed budget recommendation. And we added $40,000 to cover the cost of the new math curriculum. The total cost was estimated at $117, but the remainder of the funds were already in the budget. So the budget that we are recommending to the budget committee or presenting to the budget committee I'll give the amount. It's $35,470,200.28.
Okay. And I believe that would be, is that all? Yep. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. And now we'll move on to any follow-up questions. I know that previously our first Zoom meeting, Mary Sear specifically asked for details about the COVID expenses to Matt, and was looking for specific line items. That was 2, and you provided some answers to her on the previous set of answers for the budget committee. And Mary followed up with me again, asking for more clarification on that today.
Can I specify?
Go ahead, Mary.
I'd like to specify that we did get an itemized list of COVID-related expenses that amounted to about $300,000, if I recall. But what we asked for was not only itemized expenses related to COVID, but the sourcing for the funding, which we didn't get. And we were also talking about maybe getting a list of any line item transfers in excess, all line item transfers in excess of $5,000 or $10,000 if it would be easier, because that's the number that is used by the school board in that where they need to get approval before transferring money between line items. And I was just wondering if we were going to get that information so that we can have a better idea of where the surpluses have historically existed to cover these emergency expenses and unanticipated expenses.
My hand is.
Matt, I'm sorry. It was
My hand is
No.
blending into the background. Okay. So I've investigated whether we can run a quick report out of the computer system for transfers. This year was awful weird in the sense that when we were doing transfers, the approval would come into my email and then I would send it off to another person for recording. So the record keeping really isn't, it's more electronic this year, but to get a detailed listing out of the computer system of what they are, it just doesn't list it out. It's not, I'm very unhappy with it not being able to do that.
Is
How
this
do you
your
think
new
that-
software?
Sorry?
Is this your new software?
No,
No.
that's why we need to go to the new software. That's what this is the very type of thing that is very time consuming manually. And the new system should not be time consuming manually. I mean, our system is so outdated that the software provider doesn't even provide support anymore.
Hmm.
So it's literally, we're moving to the new system right now.
Yeah. So traditionally, what we'll try to do is first try to find surpluses within that department. So say, for example, if the high school needs something, we're going to ask them to try to find something within the high school. And then if not, then we're going to go, we know we have a surplus in health insurance. So we're going to go after health insurance. But for the budget that's presented tonight, the health insurance amount has been dropped way down. So there shouldn't be any more, or it shouldn't be much more left in that.
Mary?
I just want to clarify the reason that I think it's important for not only us as a committee to understand this, but so that we can relate with confidence to the voters, because we're asking them to look at a proposed budget that's $1 million less than what it has been in the past. And I've been seeing little comments on social media talking to parents in my neighborhood, and they're seeing it as a huge cut. And I would just like them to rest assured that not only are the professionals putting forth these funding requests, these budget requests. Mr. Ambrose is going to his department heads, asking for their advice. What do we need? What are we statutorily obligated to provide? To come up with these, this budget number of 35,470,284 and change. But I think it's important for the public to understand not only where these surpluses exist on a line item basis, so that there is actually surplus there, not just for inter-line item transfer, but also when we look at, I was talking to Annie earlier about the surplus, the $2.5 million surplus. They need to understand that that was an extraordinary return to taxpayers and that it's not likely to happen again. But I think it's important that the voters who are asking to not only approve a budget, but collective bargaining agreements, in order to give them the confidence to understand that this is not a big hack of the budget. This is, a justifiable number. There has been surplus in the past in these pockets, and it likely still exists in some way, shape, or form. So just to appease the voters and help them to understand that, the money is being asked to support specific operations, and it's sufficient based on need. I just want to complete the picture, and because it was such an extraordinary thing with the $300,000 that was provided to us in line item detail, and that we did have such a large surplus. I was just looking for some kind of reinforcement that would give voters confidence to help us pass a budget. I'm not looking to nitpick,
Yeah.
I think knowledge is power, and we're all on the same team here, all hoping to get this accomplished.
Can I answer her other question about COVID?
Sure.
Okay, so on December 1st, I filed a grant application for our second round of COVID preparedness cost. Recently, in the last couple of weeks, we received $265,400. Basically, the state had $35 million left over in their Gopher grant that they were allocating to a lot of the cities and towns. And what they did was they gave each school $200 per student for sending districts to cover COVID costs. COVID preparedness costs. And we had to be able to document our usage of that $265,000. But if we exceeded that let us be eligible to participate in another $10 million reserve fund. So it's a competitive grant. That $10 million is competitive. So I submitted a application for an additional $459,000. Would cover the cost of teacher training for remote learning, and additional COVID costs that we incurred this fiscal year. So I'm not expecting $459,000. I'm really expecting like a pennies on the dollar. And at the same time, funding, the high school student funding for Fremont went to Fremont School District, and we've made a request with Fremont School District to see if they'll send some money over our way to cover the costs of preparedness for those students as well. Does that answer your question well enough?
I don't think so. I think Mary, can I chime in? Because I think what Mary's trying to figure out is, Mary, tell me if I'm wrong. I talked to Annie a little, but I haven't had a chance to chat with you. And I think that the question is, in a normal school year with a $36 million or $35.5 million budget, we should have about 3 to 4% at the end of the year if we do a very good job with budgeting. That's about $1.2 million, because you have to have some room in your budget for unanticipated costs, right? Like Matt has done a fantastic job lowering our cost on heating oil. I would caution people about budgeting the amount that Matt got last year, because he saved us almost $20,000. He just got it right at the right moment and reserved it, just like we do for our home oil. He got a really good deal. That's not typical. So it's a balance between looking at 5-year expenditures, right? What did we spend in a 5-year period for a line? and looking at, what would be reasonable to budget. Then there's another area where we have to look at, like for health insurance. Health insurance has been coming back really, really low for the last few years, but we have to be careful because health insurance costs can change dramatically if someone has children. So you go from $12,000 for two people to $25,000 when they have a child, and we have a lot of that happen at schools. So health insurance is an example of a very dynamic area of the budget. Another thing to consider with the budgeting is just thinking about the variance in supply usage. So for example, when school's remote for 3 or 4 months, a lot of supplies don't get consumed because a lot of things happen digitally or on technology. Conversely, we had to order, and we used grant money to fund $110,000 worth of laptops last spring that we ordered. So to answer I think the big question is, and Matt, please tell me if the amount is wrong, but we basically gave back to the community about $2.3 million. Is that correct, Matt?
Yeah, and actually, I have a slideshow presentation for the next segment on the.
Okay, so I'll just let Matt
go into that.
Yeah, Matt will show that, but the question is, how much more did we spend because of COVID, or how much more did we save, and where did we save it from? And we're saying to you, it's not that simple. You can't just say, oh, like for example, I talked to Jody and she saved, what was it, Matt, $70,000 or $80,000 in special ed because we were remote. It doesn't show up as a line transfer that you can just pull and talk about. Some of that money was transportation that she saved because she didn't transport kids. Some of the other money that Jody saved was in school psychological services that didn't happen, but they'll happen in the future. So it's not necessarily an amount of money that was an excess in the budget, so we had it for COVID. It just happened that we didn't utilize those funds for that purpose. Schools had supply money that they didn't use this spring that went into the amount of money. And frankly, when you're just not running the schools, there are all kinds of small little savings that add up to a lot of money that are really hard to quantify in a specific line or area. But I would say this, if in a typical year, we have a $1.3 million return to the community, which is what we typically have, especially if I have to freeze the budget. When you're in COVID, to think that you would save another $1 million to be closed for March, April, May, and June, and honestly, a good chunk of July. We didn't have any summer programming last year, but that wouldn't affect this return. I'm just simply saying that it's not unfathomable to think that we would 2.3 million sounds just about right on to me based on the overall budget, but it's not like we can just say, oh, we saved a little more here and a little more there, and this was extra there, and that's how we did. It doesn't work like that. And so I'm not blowing this off in any way. I'm just saying that it's not as simple as we didn't, the line item transfers, Matt wouldn't transfer $10,000 to buy masks. He would just buy it out of the high school supply line. Matt wouldn't transfer $10,000 to buy wipes, which is not an exaggeration. We have actually bought disinfecting wipes at the level of $10,000 to $20,000. They would just come out of the high school supply line. They don't exist in a balanced transfer. So I just want everyone to understand that it's not as clean and simple as just pressing a button and being able to give you those figures. And we're not trying to hide anything. It's just being closed for 4 months saves a lot of money in a lot of different areas. We didn't run the lawnmowers. We saved on lawnmower fuel. I mean, it's.
Annie?
I just think that as a committee, we really have to think about how we can simply present what Tom and Matt have been saying. Having some guesstimate of numbers is probably, to say, even just to say 2.3 million, was given, wasn't it more like 2.5?
Yeah, it's 2.3. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna try to just go to a particular slide in the slideshow because this seems to be an important topic. So this is I'm gonna move away the pictures. This screen right here shows the big ticket items for the $2.3 million surplus. Okay, part of it comes from revenues. Another part comes from turn back of appropriation, of unspent appropriation. Okay, So the first two parts are unanticipated tuition. So we received additional tuition from just random people who brought their children into the school district for school, and then also from Fremont. We also had unanticipated state aid at $111,000 because it's difficult for us to budget for vocational transportation and CAT aid. So then for expenditures, we had unspent health insurance for $374,000, unspent services, including special education, of $654,000, unspent IT maintenance services of $105,000. Now, capital improvements related to the middle school transition, we didn't spend $258,000 that we planned to spend.
And that's because Brian Stack saved it by Brian Stack did a fantastic job with the locker room situation. He saved us almost $300,000, but then some other items cost a little bit more money. And I just want to give Brian the credit where it's due. He directly saved us that money.
Yeah, absolutely correct. 168,000 in unspent transportation. That includes regular day, special education, and athletics. We had almost 158,000.
Uh-oh.
Whoops.
That has never happened before with Matt.
It's because he doesn't have any heat on.
I bet his computer died.
Oh no.
Uh-oh. He'll be right back. Hold on, I'll call him.
I want everybody to know that I have to use a tissue from time to time because I have dry eye and it makes my nose runny. It's not COVID.
Went to
Matt's coming back in just a second. His computer died. Hang on.
went to one of my children's doctor appointments and I had seasonal allergies and I had to leave. I
Oh,
had to cancel the whole appointment. I'm like, ridiculous.
I developed a seasonal allergy barking cough at the beginning of October.
oh dear.
My whole family flipped out. Like everyone was just like freaking out. I had to go get a test and it was just ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever get tested for antibodies, Tom?
No, they wouldn't let me. My doctor's office doesn't do it. They don't trust it.
Really?
I'm pretty sure I had COVID last February, because I had all the symptoms, including the loss of taste and smell for a number of days. And it was really pronounced, right?
They say that's absolutely definitive. Yeah.
Huh.
And luckily I have allergies and I have a CPAP machine. So that was great. It made a big difference.
There he is.
Hey,
I am so sorry about that.
I thought I did it.
You were in a good flow there, Matt. You were going along and.
Okay, let me see if I can share my screen again. I think my computer was unplugged.
That's what I thought.
All right, so we're back at this. So let's see. I think I was at unspent student transportation. The next one is unspent supplies at 158,000. And then finally, unspent energy needs. That would be propane, electricity, and heating oil for $111,000. Okay, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Matt, what was the total of those items? Do you have that?
Of these are the big items. So I think it's like $2.2 million.
Okay, all right.
There's so much stuff that make up the mix that I just try to pick out the really big ones.
Thanks for doing that. That was really helpful.
It really
Okay.
is.
And I think it's important that the voters understand that, even if it's in a single graphic in whatever we present, because that's a lot of the questions I'm hearing and kind of being insinuated that, everybody prefers to be in remote learning because it's more cost effective. And everyone here knows that's not the case. But I think it's important to show how the numbers break down, even on a high level, and how they are likely or not likely to carry forward. As simple as that.
Thanks, Mary. I agree with that. Yeah, it really helps. The other thing, Mary, I think would be important for the group to understand is that the reductions in the $1 million are really primarily staffing and health insurance. They're not anything that was like extra money that we realized when we had COVID we didn't need it anymore. We
It was part of the plan. It was part of your restructuring plan.
Right.
It's right in the
Yes.
And I think it's important to state that too. We said we were going to save $1 million, and look at that, here it is.
Yeah, and we did better with the reorganization than we thought we would. As Matt outlined, we thought that we would return about $430,000 over the course of the reorganization to the community, and we actually returned closer to $6 million in the end with the extra $250,000 that Matt just shared.
Nice.
And that happened over 2 budget years. So I think it's just important for everyone to remember that we are continuing to look at class sizes, and I'm happy to answer your questions this evening about any of that.
Rick?
So the savings number I have is $1,224,787. Is that correct?
The savings for which part, Rick? I'm not sure what you're referring to.
The total savings for the teacher reductions overall.
Oh, I know he's coming.
From the presentation last night, I thought I had 1.2 million.
Yeah, I think that was right.
Well, but it's important to recognize that there are positions that have been removed, but there are positions that have been added. So only calculate the reductions and don't put the add backs. Remember, I added 2 teachers at the middle school, right? But they have class size increases, which I think is really important for the community to hear from a transparency perspective. The administration is not just saying cut, cut, cut. The administration is saying be efficient. We're going to remove some things here where we have excess, but we also needed to add teachers to the middle school. So there's also a couple of other positions that Jody added in special education, a social worker and a speech pathologist. So Rick, that might be the gross total amount of reductions, but there were add backs as well.
Yeah, okay. And we also removed the part-time speech pathologist, correct?
That's correct, and we replaced it with a full-time speech aide. And that was discussed at length last night by the board. I'm assuming you watched it. But
yeah, with full disgust, I watched it, and I'm sure we'll talk about it tonight.
Yep, sounds good.
All righty. So, covered Mary and Annie. Did you have follow-ups with that?
Not at this point, no. I'm kind of interested to hear the Q&A.
Okay. The Q&A regarding what?
The additional questions that Matt might have. He had some slides for us.
Oh, yes. Yeah. All right. Okay. So Tom, do you have anything further to say, or are you going to go off anything to follow up with Matt?
I'm just here to help.
All right.
Answer questions.
Okay, Matt, you've got the floor.
All right. So I tried to make a presentation that's based upon that section in the agenda. I'm moving you guys over to the other screen. So let's see. So you asked me to do a presentation on school tax impact and estimated revenues. So first thing I want to do is I want to show to everyone that the enrollment's declining, and it really impacts the tax rate. And what you'll notice from this particular slide is that Kingston is declining faster than Newton. Student enrollment for Kingston is down 41.76 students over a 3-year period, and Newton is down only 11.6 over that same 3-year period. Now, what that will equate to is a higher tax rate for Newton and a lower tax rate for Kingston. However, when you look at the assessed valuation between the two towns, you can see that Kingston blue line is increasing slightly from year to year to year. But for Newton, they reassessed their valuation this year, and they actually increased their valuation. I think it was like 25.6%. They went from 511 million to 640, almost $643 million in its value. And that's going to drive the tax rate down for Newton. So when we look at the combined tax rate over the last 3 years, you can see the orange line there is Newton. It dropped significantly from 2019 to 2020. Now, the big significance, there's two factors. The first one is we returned $2.3 million. And yes, that was, it's being allocated to Kingston and Newton based upon the student ratios, okay? But the largest portion of that decrease is the revaluation of the assessed values of all the town, the property in the town. Now, this is a slide of surplus funds. You can see that 3 years ago, we had $1.5 million returned. 2019, we had just barely over $1 million returned. And this past year, we just returned $2.3 million that was used to reduce the tax rate. Now, this is the slide here about the $2.3 million. We briefly went over that. If you want to revisit this, we can come back. We can circle back and revisit this. One of the other things that's important to know when considering the tax rate, when I'm estimating the tax rate for 2022, I'm using these numbers, and they are just pure estimates. And the most important one that I want to point out to people is the second number up from the bottom. That's $569,000. That's the current balance that is sitting in what's called the contingency fund. And the contingency fund basically is we're allowed to retain up to 2.5% of the surplus fund balance of the school district and for the following year. And the school board can use it for only two purposes. The first purpose is to reduce the tax rate. And then the second purpose is for emergency expenditures. So I'm assuming in this analysis that the school board's going to release the $569,000 in June of 2021. So the operating budget that was approved by the school board last night, $35,470,284.28, equates to this is just an estimate, okay? The estimated Kingston tax rate for local and state school tax is going to be $16.58, which is a 48-cent or a 3% increase over the tax bill that you're receiving this December. For a house that's valued at $300,000, that would equate to $4,974. In Newton, your tax rate would be $17.49, a 49-cent increase, 3% again. The $3,000 value home is going to be $5,247. Now, I know some people have asked, why is the increase the same for Kingston and Newton? It's basically because some of the factors are following each other. Like the student count, the estimated student count this year is down, I think, proportionally. But the assessed value is based upon last year's assessed value. I don't have next year's assessed value. That comes out in August of next year. So it's just going to be a flat percent increase for both communities. Now, for the default budget, what was approved last night was $35,527,941.94. And this is going to be, it's greater than the operating budget. And for Kingston, it's going to be $16.61 tax rate. And for Newton, it's going to be a $17.53 tax rate. Let's see. I think I'm at the last. Oops, that was it. Wait a minute, is that it? Oh, it's going through really fast. There we go. All right.
Annie, did that answer your questions?
Oh, yeah, that really helps. And I think it's going to be very helpful to have those slides in some format for our presentations. Those are really, really helpful.
Okay. Is that all you got there, Matt?
That's it.
All right. Okay.
Can I ask a question about one of Matt's slides?
Yes, sure. Go ahead, Maura.
I'm wondering, and I don't know if this is a stupid question, but when money gets returned back to the taxpayers, does that recalculate what the per pupil cost is? Is that per pupil cost based on what the actual budget was, or does it get taken at the end? So if we had a 2.2 million surplus or whatnot, does that get calculated after whatever the surplus is?
No, it doesn't get included in the actual surplus. The per pupil, there's two per pupil costs. The first one is on a budget basis where we're just taking the budget that you're going to be approving or looking at tonight, and then we're going to be dividing that amongst the estimated per pupils. That's just going to be like on a budget basis. But when we actually, what you see from the state for per pupil cost is what we actually spent for expenditures and only expenditures. There's no revenue netting down that number.
Oh, okay, that's right, because there's revenues and expenses in there. But the expenses that we saved on, when we have those charts that compare per pupil versus Exeter or Raymond, that is it's the savings in the fuel or whatever, that's been taken off. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
I
Thank
just
you.
speak to this for 1 minute too. I think it's funny. I had a really great conversation with the admin team about this morning. There's really two per pupil expenses. One is when you take the gross budget, $35,500,000 in change or whatever, and divide it by the number of students. There's a second calculation for the cost per pupil, which is that number less the revenues, because that's what your actual tax base is based on, is the budget minus the revenues that come in, right? So the state aid, the CAT aid, the tuition from Fremont. When you take all of that revenue and subtract it from the $35,500,000, you get a very different cost per pupil. And it's easily arguable that, and there's no right or wrong in this, but I'm just saying that.
Excuse me, Tom.
Yeah.
Vanessa just dropped off.
Oh.
Or I just happened to notice Vanessa's gone.
She just texted me asking if I was having an issue. So I think she was having an issue.
Okay. Let's give her a minute or two, please.
No problem. Thanks for letting me know. I didn't see that.
Hey, Tom, no. I think she was talking about on the pure expenditure basis, which is what you pull up from the state.
Right. And the pure expenditure basis is the total budget amount, the actual full total budget. And there are all kinds of things that we receive funds for within that amount. So it's just something to consider. I always encourage people to think about both calculations and to look at both calculations.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good point. I feel as though we're constantly comparing ourselves with other school districts, and are we high, are we low, where are we? But just thinking it as when you guys were talking about the revenues, I also have to wonder too, if some schools have more special education needs, that's probably gonna rise up their cost as well, and how that plays against with revenue. Okay, I get what you guys are saying, and I guess I have some more thoughts I want to work through my brain on that. I think the bottom line is you have to take these numbers with a grain of salt, because there's always a story behind where that number came from. So. Well,
yeah, and another district may have a lower cost per pupil, but they also don't have $4.3 million coming in from Fremont. Another district, you have to remember too that smaller, and I see Vanessa there, Jim. I was kind of holding out. I'll pick back up where we were. Hey, Vanessa, can you hear us okay?
She's connecting. And Annie, I saw you had raised your
Is it-
hand.
Oh, yeah, I can't even remember what it was now. It'll come back to me.
Sorry to get you quick enough.
I wanted to ask a follow-up, and basically, I think Maura asked a really good one. The numbers on the Department of Ed are based on budget, right? They're based on actual.
They're based upon actual.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
okay, that's interesting. I never asked that question before. So they're
And-
based on actual and minus transportation and debt service and food service.
Thanks. And that, oh, go ahead, Matt.
So there's a state report that I have to do that's due by September 1st. And at the bottom of that report, it automatically calculates the per pupil cost that ends up on a state report. It's just a formula that they've created. But when we deal with the tuition for Fremont, it's based upon another formula where we are backing out certain costs like transportation, certain special education, but we're adding back other things like IDEA grants. It's a really complicated formula.
Thank you.
But I think that one point that I wanted to make is that, like the revenue from Fremont, another area that a lot of districts don't have is the fact that we pay $2.5 million a year, roughly. I'm using Ambrose math, not Matt Angel math, but about 2.5 million a year for the building at the high school. That's a big expense that drives up our cost per pupil for now, and that's going away at the end of 2026. So we need to remember too that there's another issue that we face, which is our cost per pupil is really challenging in the sense that when you have a declining enrollment, you're chasing your tail, because you have certain costs that are somewhat fixed, like the building. So in other words, if you have a building that you're heating or doing electrical for a school year and you lose 50 students, the cost for the heat and the electric is still the same. So the cost for heat and electric per pupil goes up a lot. And that is one of the things that we're challenged with. I can tell you surely that the cost for staffing for a lot of areas in the district is the same at 2,000 students as 1,500 students. And then what happens is you don't have the economy of scale. That's why I keep saying to people that encouraging a conversation with Fremont to keep Fremont students is not only a help to our community with regard to the tuition, but it's also a help to our community with regard to economy of scale. If Fremont leaves our district, we will have 380 high school students in a building built for 1,000 people. And that's 5 years away, folks, 4 years away. It's not way off in the future. It's soon. So we have a lot to talk about over the next 18 months about what to do about our cost per pupil, but we have to remember that a smaller school district costs more to run, period. There's no question about that. You lose economy of scale, and that is really challenging. So one strategy that we have to employ as a community is to get more students into Sanborn. And that's something that we'll be talking about a lot more over the next year, praying that we're done with this colossal pandemic mess. So that's all I had to say, Jim. Sorry to go so long.
Oh, that's fine.
And if I can just follow up with one last thing, I think, Tom, that's kind of what I was trying to get at, which is my concern with us cutting the budget, our numbers are so much higher than surrounding schools or whatnot. But my concern is that we keep cutting the budget, but we have these overhead fixed costs that there's nothing we can do about. When do we stop cutting? Because there's just no more to cut. We're stuck with the fuel for the building. It kind of is what it is. So that's just kind of one of my concerns, is that I feel like that's a slide that's always getting used with people as, oh, look how high our expenses are per pupil. And I get that to a certain extent, but if we don't have a lot of kids, that is what it is. Yes, we need to keep Fremont, but I think people need to accept that. And not for nothing, having more kids in the district, let's be honest, that's not making what I actually pay in taxes go down. We're just trying to make us all feel better. Oh yeah, now per pupil is going down, but my tax bill is still the same. We're just we're making our per pupil go down. So sometimes I think people are stuck on this rate without really realizing that you're not actually saving tax money. If we have more kids in the district, our tax bills are not magically going to go down.
No, but I will say that, so for example, if we hadn't proportionally reduced staff, if you look at my presentation from the night that I presented to the board, I presented how many staff members had been reduced over the last 3 or 4 years based on enrollment. And I want to be clear that I don't recommend reductions unless it's based on real enrollments. And the reality is, as I said before, we added to the middle school in this budget because that's what the enrollments are. It's not a political thing for me at all. It's literally, this is what we need to run the schools. The reality is that if we hadn't reduced those staff members over the last 4 years, our budget would be almost $4 million more than it is today.
And that's fine. I just don't know. I'm not really opposed to necessarily what we've done in the past. I'm not sure. I am just concerned for where the stopping point might be.
I'm
and
sorry.
I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself in my concern with, we don't know what's going on with COVID and cutting more staff. That's all.
Sure. We'll have that conversation in just a minute. But what I would say is that before we move on is I want you to know that there's a point where I'll say that's not a good thing.
Okay.
So for example, if you said to me tonight as a budget committee, and I think some of the folks who have been on budget committee a little longer have seen me have quite a throwdown with Charlton Swayze and Jim Doggett at times about things. And I will say that when I really believe that it's going to be detrimental to the kids, I'll tell you. So for example, if you guys as a budget committee say to me, Tom, we're cutting those 2 middle school teachers, we don't believe that you need them, you're going to hear me say, that's a really, really bad idea. And this is why. Now, I'm not going to get like weird about it or wound up. I'm just going to tell you the facts, and then you do what you do. And then we have to deal with the budget that we receive from the voters and figure it out. Right. But it just because the BudCom reduces or adds something doesn't mean it's going to change what it is that the BudCom reduces or adds. It means it changes the bottom line of the budget. The role of the BudCom is to adopt a budget and make sure that it aligns with the community's ability to pay and or needs. And that's what we're here for tonight. And I just want everyone to know that there's a lot of conversation about the high school 6.5 positions. The reality is we analyzed 4 years of high school schedules and looked at class sizes. It's not just this year. And we let it go while we were doing the reorganization. But the reality is that we feel that we can run the high school with the number of staff that we've asked for. I'm on the fence about the speech pathologist. I mean, Dawn had a really compelling conversation last night, and I'm sure we'll talk about it tonight. And then the question about Bakey School is pretty straight ahead. We have contingency funds now that we never had when I was hired. If the Bakey School pops up in numbers, we're going to hire a teacher. We're already watching second grade right now because second grade's right at that 2021 number. And if you said to me as a superintendent, Tom, what's the one teaching position that you would, if you were given the money to add one back, where would it go? I would probably say second grade at Bakey. That's the spot I'm watching, but I think we can do it because we have contingency funds to add a teacher if it bubbles up, not because I'm not 100% confident in any K through 6 enrollment numbers right now because of COVID. It's challenging. And we added back almost 100 students because of that. So we are operating in the most difficult budgeting season we'll ever face with regard to enrollments because people just didn't send their kids. So Jim, I'm kind of opening up the conversation here, I guess.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So any further questions or comments from anyone?
On the budget or what? What are we on now?
Well, Maura's concern was based on, Maura, please restate that. You're mute.
I was just trying to clarify. I guess we kind of went on a tangent, but Matt's slide about what made me think I was asking what the per pupil cost because Matt of one of Matt's slides with the 2.2 million or whatever it was. So I was just kind of going in a tangent. I mean, I guess it kind of is a little bit jumping ahead talking about my concern about cutting teachers. Where do we stop?
Okay.
But it was all kind of based on a Matt slide. So
All right.
we can move on, I guess.
All right. Okay. Yeah, so let's move on to discussions about the budget. Everybody all set there? Okay. Annie, anything?
Well, I did borrow from Jamie his, let me find it. His presentation from last night. I don't know if everybody saw it or not, but I did a couple of things with it. I asked him if he would send it to me. So I think I'm sharing it. Is it on there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So first of all, he commented, and I kind of reworked this, but basically the adjustments were salaries, and then adjustment to estimates to reflect actual 5-year experience, and then the note that there are some audits that are being done over the next 12 months, and kind of in point of both Maura's comments and Tom's, that where do we stop? We stop where, it no longer makes sense. We add if it makes sense. We do whatever we need to do that is educationally advisable. And I trust our educators to give us that advice. These audits very well may expose some areas that either need more or need less. We don't know. They're an audit. And then sick leave, and the note that all planned intervention is funded in this budget. The general budget information, the current budget versus the recommended, and the difference is now a little under $1 million with the addition that the school board did last night. And it's driven by the staff reductions, 8.5 positions. Additionally, some minor technology changes and health care, grounds and facilities, and a few other up and down. And then one of the things that Jamie pointed out that I think it's really important for us to remember is that, COVID is weird. We have a definite anomaly. Enrollments are going down, but they went down extremely. As a result, our come on, stop. As a result, our student teacher ratio went way down. Now with the proposal for next year, it's actually lower than it was 5 years ago, which means that there are more teachers for the number of students than we had 5 years ago. To me, this is showing on the cost per student. And I agree with what Maura was saying. These are just indicators. These are not basis for making a decision. They're just indicators of trends of where we are. But if we look at comparably sized districts.
Annie, I think Rick has a question for you.
Yeah.
Could you go back one slide, please? Because I just want to get a point of clarification there.
Yeah.
You said, and I just want to, you said that, enrollment was down, but I want to make sure we read the footnote. COVID, the anomaly was COVID, and specifically for 2021, it was a lot of homeschooling, and kindergarten was kept home. So
100%
that played a big role in it.
Yeah, and that's the
Okay. I just want to make sure we said that. Okay.
Okay. Yep. That's exactly right. When we have a budget committee over the last several years, many years, way before I was on it, one of the comparisons that has been done is comparably sized districts, because size matters as far as what it costs to educate children in a school, and we don't benefit from the savings ability of a Pinkerton or a Timberlane or an Exeter because they're so much larger, or Bedford. But we can compare to Oyster River and Epping and some other Litchfield, some other nearby, kind of southern New Hampshire districts that have pre-K through 12. And when we compare against those, we are high in our costs. And so the question is not, oh, we're high, let's cut it. It's why are we high? And are we getting bang for that buck? And are we getting the kind of results we want? And one of the things that's been going on over these last few years, I think, is that under our superintendent and with his really remarkable staff, they're using and reallocating, for instance, from closing a school that was bigger than our capacity, money within that's already been appropriated and that's been there over the years. They're reallocating it to try and get better investment. And I, for one, am 100% behind adding this 40,000 to get a new and better math program. The other thing that's important to know is that we have had increases for teachers. And one thing that, is apparent to me is that how many have we reduced, like 18 over the last 5 years, teaching positions?
Yes, I'd have to look at the slide or the data that I presented at the board meeting, but it's
say that's the right number. Whatever number it is, that number, fewer teachers are getting this pile of money. So that means that there's a little bit more in there for them. And to me, that's one of the areas we really need to catch up in. The past budget history has shown that when overly aggressive budget requests come in tough times, especially, teachers' contracts just fail. And I don't think we can afford to have another failed teacher contract. So to me, one of the most important things we have to do this year in our budget planning is protect that teacher contract and make it palatable in a time when people are really suffering. They're losing their jobs. They're having to lose hours. I mean, I read on Facebook all the time how people have to stay home because they have to homeschool their kids. I mean, it's just it's heartbreaking what they're going through. And there's just less money available to people. And some people are, marriages are breaking up, and there's just it's an awful time. So we need to be very, very careful about what we do. Our costs per student have gone up slightly over the years. And as Tom said, that happens when you get fewer kids and you have past teacher contracts, which we want. It does drive a little bit higher cost per student, but they're coming because they're not going up at the same rate as they have been in the state. Our costs are getting a little bit more in line. Our costs are going up, but not as much as the average. The SAT testing results, I hope you all saw this. They were 30% proficiency in math 3 years ago. This year, and with fewer kids, only kids who elected, basically, or whose parents elected for them to take it. So kids who absolutely were against taking it didn't take it, but only 20% proficiency. Now, they hadn't been in school, and the state proficiency went down from about 55% down to about 45%. They had the same circumstances going on. They had optional testing. They had, they didn't have any school until after the testing. They had the same set of circumstances. Our test results show that the performance that's going on is abysmal. And thank God we have an administration which right now, Tom and the school board made the decision to hire a math coordinator. And so we have a math coordinator for 7 through 12, as well as elementary. And the math coordinator and the principal in charge of curriculum are digging into where are the gaps. They can really dig into those SATs and see if there are any certain gaps and really start to address them. And I'm deeply grateful for that. I think our math and English both need to go up, and that kind of probing needs to happen and addressing it with our curriculum. So all these things basically have interrelationships, and what we need to do is to come up with a solution for what we can do to improve outcomes and improve taxpayers' ability to pay and to be willing to pass the teacher contracts. So that's basically what I want to say is the most important thing. Number one driver for us should be things that will give improved performance for students. Number two, higher pay for students, for teachers. And actually, those go together. A higher student teacher ratio is 72% of our budget is staffing. So that's why if we have declining enrollments continue, which they're projected to based on this outside study, then that would drive some more reductions, hopefully always through RIFs, which it's been so far. So that's basically what I had to say. I do have, whoops, let me stop sharing. On the budget, I do have one other thing that I would like to see added, which is I would like to add $1 per student to as for SOROC. I think one of the questions that was asked is why are we no longer having CARES? Why is it zeroed out? I mean, what's the name of it?
Air.
What? DARE. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're no longer paying anything for DARE because SOROC is basically providing a lot of those services, and DARE was just a 5th grade program. SOROC is, throughout. But I'd like to see us put in $1,500 for SOROC. She does, I talked to her today and said, A, would that make a difference? And B, what does she actually do for this in the schools, or is it mostly dealing with families outside of the schools? And she said it make a huge difference. They're always scrambling, number one. She currently co-leads with Amanda, our SAC, a youth group in school, which is 6 or 7 kids. She's typically had kids who come and have lunch with her because they want to hang out and talk about things in their lives. This fall, Amanda was out on maternity leave, and for 3 months, she really filled that role. I mean, she's doing a lot in our schools and for our schools, and I think $1,500 is something that is really small, but could make a difference. So I'd like to propose adding that in. I'm done. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Tom, what's your take on the SOROC stuff? I'm not that familiar with it at all.
I absolutely support that. I think that's a wonderful idea. I would recommend doubling what she's saying, but it's up to you. Okay. I think it's a great idea. I wish it'd come up sooner. I would have just put it in the budget. Thank you, Annie.
Welcome. I would like to say, I'd be happy to propose going double that, going 3,000. I do know that she does so much. Our towns do give and vote to give $1 per resident to SOROC, or they did last year, and we're hoping that'll continue. She lost her grant funding a year ago, and so this is how SOROC continues, is with us. And by the way, Kingston is insisting on a citizens petition for that to be on the ballot. So she needs signatures, and if any of our Kingston residents here would be willing to sign that, I have it. I can forward you the email with the ballot or with the petition form. So.
I have a question. Didn't this come up at the last meeting where somebody questioned why there was no DARE, and somebody said there was money in the budget for the SOROC? What?
Yeah, I had questioned it, Moira, and the response that I got was that they've replaced that program with SOROC, but it wasn't clear that they actually weren't giving the funding to SOROC. So
okay, so there wasn't actually money for the SOROC in there.
That's right. SOROC is funded by a number of different communities and organizations. It's not just a Sanborn initiative. What the answer to the question is this: we don't have a DARE program, so that $2,500 is not being expended for the purpose it was allotted for. That's just Matt cleaning up the budget. SOROC is a completely separate group. There's also, we have a partially grant-funded substance abuse counselor at the high school that is in the guidance office that we have as well. That's a separate program too. So I just don't, there's no intent to I just want to be clear that if folks want to help out the SOROC program, I am 100% for this, but I don't want people to think that we were saying that the DARE money went to SOROC. That's not true. We can't do that, right? So thank you.
I just thought it was, but I kind of thought that's what had happened. So I didn't realize there was no money in the budget for it. Okay.
And I can see how that happened, and I'm sorry, that wasn't intentional.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to say that one of the things, the SOROC person's name is Charlotte. One of the things Charlotte said was that the SAC does a tremendous amount. That's the person in the guidance that Tom was just referring to. She does a fabulous job. She is busy, on top of things, helping kids all the time. Charlotte acts as a consultant and collaborator. She is not running the program. So I want to be clear that, you know, this is an additional help to our district. It isn't a replacement in any way for the need or the funding for the SAC.
Thank you.
So to go further with the proposed budget, Mary?
I was gonna ask Annie if she was gonna make a,
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Are you going to make a motion?
yeah,
Oh,
you're gonna
I
make-
don't, do you want to make a motion at this point? I'll make a motion that we add $3,000 to the budget.
Well, I just, can I say something before we do that?
Yeah.
I think there's probably going to be other discussion with some other requests for additional funding. And I'm not opposed to what you're saying at all. I would actually vote right now for it, but I don't, you know, maybe we should talk about some of the things we're going to be asking for here and then come back and make some motions. That's just a suggestion.
It's okay with me. Well, however you want to do it, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, let's go through here some discussions and what people want to get out there before we actually turn around and start adding money and get to a point where there's a good idea later on that happens to be a little bit more, and we turn around and say, well, we've already expelled or put this much money back into the budget. So let's not go with that.
Okay, so I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. All right. So let's see. All right, I'll go across the top of my board. I'll go last on this. Tammy, what do you have? Anything to add for the budget?
My role, I think, as the school board rep is to support the budget that we voted on. So I totally support SOROC. I probably will abstain on that motion because I'm not going to vote against it. I've known Charlotte Scott for years. And so I don't think I have a role in making any recommendations to you guys.
Okay.
Except to present the budget that we voted. It was a unanimous vote. I will add that.
All right.
Last night.
Mary?
I don't have anything to add. I think that the administrators did a great job, the department heads preparing a needs-based budget, and Tom and Matt did a great job pulling it all together. You know, I watched the video from last night, and there was discussion about the speech position, and where Ms. Dutton tried to make a motion to get
You cut out.
Cut out.
Your volume cut out again.
No.
Mary, your voice, you cut out. Can't hear you. We can't hear you, Mary.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
All I want to say is I trust the administrators. I trust the educators. They're the professionals. They came up with this needs-based budget, and I support them. I don't feel like we need to. I personally don't need to consider adding teachers back or adding specialists back because they came up with the recommendations. It's been vetted through the school board last night, and so I'm in a good place with it. Thank you.
Okay. Rick?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. There's been a couple comments that I just want to make sure that I clear up real quick. The school board did discuss some topics last night. There were some proposals that were made that were not seconded, and there was no discussions on them. So I want to be clear about that. And I do feel that the school board should second every motion, so there is discussion because that's what we elected them to do. All right, so let's talk about speech assistance real quick. I'm gonna share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just gonna read through this. Give me a second.
Rick, you keep muting
Yeah.
yourself.
I'm sorry?
I said you kept muting yourself.
Oh. Yeah, there must be something wrong with my computer. Sorry, let me try it again. Definition of a speech disorder. Speech, the audible or of language deviation so far from speech that it calls.
Rick, somehow you
Rick?
keep muting yourself, Rick.
It's not even, he keeps cutting out. Muting was an issue, but you were also like not even being able to be heard.
He's muted now.
Yeah, you muted now, Rick.
Okay, so you can hear me now, right?
Yes.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
But
So now you understand the point that I'm making, because I did that on purpose.
Oh.
Imagine if you're a child trying to communicate a need to a teacher and they cannot understand you and the child cannot articulate his words. It's the best example I can give you. Okay, so let's just go through this real quick. So a speech disorder is a deviation so far from the speech of other people that it calls attention to itself. It interferes with communication. It causes the speaker or listener distress. Communication disorders such as stuttering, impaired articulation, a language impairment, and a voice impairment that adversely affects a child's educational performance. I don't know how much better I can say from that. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my son. Some of you know him, some of you don't. I have two children in the school system. Gabe was very articulate, my oldest son, speaking at right around 1. Caleb was late to speak. And when he did, my older son, Gabe, understood him fine. Oddly enough, Laura and I, my wife, we didn't understand him. So it was more like, hey, Gabe, what did Caleb just say? And he'd tell us. We recognized that was a problem early on, and we had Richie McFarland involved in early intervention before he went to school, and he showed improvement. And a fantastic, can't speak highly enough about that organization and the people that are involved. But really, and honestly, truly, I mean, this is why it's so dear to me. Through his speech work at Bakey, he is now flourishing. He communicates effectively. He's able to express his emotions, his needs, his wants. He has an increased confidence level. He's engaged in more activities, Cub Scouts, outside of the home, because he can articulate his needs. So he has an IEP where he's supposed to get speech assistance 2 times per week. What I heard last night and what I confirmed today is there's 91 students at the Bakey School. That's 18 and a half students once per week. So I guess my first question is, where does Caleb fall into the 2 times per week? But that doesn't have to be answered today. And I don't want to make this just about my son, because my son has a friend, and I'm not going to use his name, but this friend was a staple in our home. Same grade, 2nd grade right now, same sort of scenario, speech issue. His parents, unfortunately, didn't recognize it early enough, and he did not have an intervention with Richie McFarland. And they were both in the same grade. That's how we met them. And unfortunately, he was, Caleb was more advanced than him. And what we found is when that couple came to our home with their children, it was the same routine. We would be saying, hey, Caleb, what did your friend just say? And Caleb would tell us. But now that child is getting the same help at Bakey, another child flourishing, communicates his needs, understood, can tell you what he wants. If he needs help from a teacher, he can ask for it, right? So last night I heard a lot of talk about, competency and, math scores. But if a child doesn't understand math and can't ask for help, what are we talking about here? What are we talking about? So we're talking about $40,000, which is about 0.1% of this budget for a part-time person to help to enable children, not students. I'm not saying students because there's grad students, college.
You do that on purpose?
to
Oh,
get
not.
them set up so they can succeed. What did I cut out?
I just a little
Grad
bit.
students.
Yeah, so I'm talking about children that need help at an early age, right? So they can succeed and communicate. And then I heard one other thing that was interesting. Jody Gutterman said that, this person could be used 1 or 2 days at the high school. And I'm scratching my head thinking, well, if we have kids in the high school that need help with speech, we probably missed the boat way, way down the river here. So I don't see how adding this person at $40,000 will not pay us back dividends. That's all I have on it. I mean, it seems like pretty common sense to me.
Could I ask a question?
Annie?
Sure.
I wanted to ask it of Tom. Tom, did you talk with Jody about this? And I mean, my assumption is that when she put forth her budget, she thought about all the IEPs and she thought about her needs and, didn't think she needed this. I mean, anybody could use, more, but I mean, is this a need that she has, or are these kids covered? How about Caleb? Is he going to get his 2 days a week?
I can't comment on a specific student.
I know that. I'm saying as an example.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, Mr. Edelman can talk about his own son, but I can't. But
I will. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I can talk about my son. My son is an IEP for 2 days a week. At 18 and a half students per day, once a week, he will not be able to get 2 times a week. And I'll have an issue with that.
Yeah, and what I'm saying to you is that this was probably the most difficult cut that Jody made. She really thought a lot about it. And she felt that you have to remember that she's not saying to reduce the amount of speech services. She actually is recommending that the skills component be taught by a full-time person instead of a part-time person. And but the full-time person will be an assistant instead of being a speech therapist. So I have to tell you, on this one, I am truly torn. It is a tough decision, right? And it is for Jody as well. And I think that what I'm going to say to you all is that this is a situation where we put forward the budget that I'm not going to put forward a budget that I can't live with, right? I trust Jody and I trust her work. But if you ask Jody, what would you add back in the special ed department, in what recommendations you've made, this would be the first thing that she would probably add back. Does that help, Annie? I know I'm not giving you it's.
No, it does. I wanted to hear, yeah. I'm sure you had a follow-up conversation about it and, kind of what it was. And it's interesting to hear that this was one that she really agonized over.
Yeah, and remember too that it's not just our needs at the high school, it's Fremont's as well. So we have speech and language isn't just speech. It's not just kids can need speech. I just want to address Rick's point that yes, someone may have missed the bus, but it also just may that some kids still need support because the language part isn't happening the way it's supposed to. We always think of speech and language as the skills to talk, but Rick did a great job of communicating that speech and language is also about communication. Mm-hmm. And that is a that's a prefrontal cortex development piece of someone's life, and people develop anywhere from early middle school through age 26 with regard to their prefrontal cortex. Right?
Okay. I want to cut the biological discussion on that at this time, not to be a jerk or anything. I have total respect for what everybody has to say about that, but we're going off on a tangent, and I'd like to get back to Mary. I know she had a question or a hand up before Annie just got back in there. Go ahead, Mary.
My question was similar to what Annie was saying. I just went through a spiel saying, I trust the administrators, I trust the professionals. And my question was going to be, if she felt this was so important, why didn't she include it? So that's already been addressed.
Okay. All right.
I wanted to just point out, emphasize that a part-time is being replaced with a full-time. So there's actually, with this current budget, the way it's being done, there's actually a higher level of speech man hours that are available than are now. So the proposal is to increase the number of hours, not to decrease them.
And I just want to make one last point that, I think I've heard a number of times that we get advice, right? So yes, trust the advice you get, but I think you should always question the advice you're getting and really look at it from every angle. And I believe, and I'll quote verbatim one of the board members last night, no one tells me how to vote. So get the advice, we interpret it, and then you figure out how you're going to vote. Just because somebody presents something to you, you have to really peel it back a little bit.
Okay. Vanessa.
I just want to add, that breakdown, I thought a lot about, what was presented last night, the school board, and this is something I really struggled with, the breakdown of the 91 students and 18 students per day. I mean, that's not even taking into consideration, any testing that has to be done or evaluations or service plans. And my concern is, are we overwhelming one person? If we have concerns as to whether or not they can even support 18 students a day, 1 day a week, depending on the session length, 15 to 30 minutes, are they going to be able to get 2 sessions in? And then what other tasks are they not able to do as a part of their job or role, because essentially they don't have the support that they need? I really struggled on this one a lot. I wasn't aware of how extensive it was and how much support it could offer our district. So I'm glad that it's being discussed tonight.
All right, Tom, I'll get back to you, Rick.
I'll go to Rick,
Yep.
please.
Rick?
Yeah, I just think the key component to that is the number of students and the fact that, what really made the difference with not only, Caleb, but the other student I was talking about is the fact that the speech pathologist had the time to make a connection, right? And that's the key, because, there's nothing more troublesome than seeing a frustrated child not be able to communicate their needs. I can tell you firsthand. And when a teacher makes a connection with a child and you can see it in your child's eyes, that's where the progress is made. So that's what I'm saying, like, let's make sure we have enough. Speech is important.
So can I,
Tom.
okay, so I'll just say this. I just want to help everyone understand. There isn't just one, the position isn't just cut. I just want to be clear about what's in the budget. And then if you choose as a group to give us more speech and language help, we'll gladly accept that. Thank you. I'm not, but there's a difference between cutting someone and having 18 kids a day serviced by one person and what's gone on here. Jody reduced a part-time speech and language therapist and replaced them with a full-time speech and language assistant. So the number of hours of support is actually being increased in the proposed budget, not reduced. The question is, and I think this is what Rick is alluding to, is that he would like to see the assistant added and keep the part-time fully certified speech and language therapist, because it's such an important issue for the community and based on what has been seen. And that's the discussion that you have to have. I just want to be clear that we did not reduce the number of speech and language serviceable hours. It actually increases, because for young kids at grades K through 3, students do need to spend a lot of time just practicing with an adult. And so the assistant does Jody's thinking was reduce the part-time therapist and replace them with a full-time assistant so that we could get more service hours. And then when she was asked, well, what would you do if we kept this part-time position in the budget? She said, well, they could do service at the elementary, but they could also do some servicing at the high school. I mean, look, in this day and age, in the modern world, if you asked me, could you use 4 speech and language therapists? The answer would be sure, of course we could. All kinds of kids could use work with speech and language, but there's a difference between benefiting from it and needing it. And Jody did not reduce the budget in terms of the serviceable hours. I just wanted to clear up that confusion, because I think people think that she cut the position. She reduced a part-time position and added a full-time assistant.
All right, we got that. Annie.
It also seems, taking this 91 kids, 18 in a day, that's obviously being covered right now with a part-time person. So my assumption from that is that there are many times where there are 2, 3, 4 kids who are being worked with in a small group. And probably that helps their communication to be able to speak with one another. So I don't think it's, I don't think that taking that number and just saying 18 kids in a day, 15 minutes a piece is accurate.
Well, it is, because actually it's known that kids at a younger age are less to interact if they don't have a high confidence level. And that's exactly where both of the kids I just talked about were. And you are correct. Caleb is now in a class of 4 and 5 kids, and it's very cumbersome.
Okay, thanks.
I've got something to add to this. My child came out of the preschool program in Newton, went into first grade. My wife and I identified that my son was not excelling. He was having difficulties. I'd be on the playground with him and he'd count to 100, no problem. Alphabets, everything in the world. He goes into school and now all of a sudden he's not interacting or exerting himself. And we actually brought it up several times with his teacher. And she said, oh, nope, everything's going fine. Everything's going fine. Well, we ended up calling for a meeting and we walked in there, and within the first 30 seconds, not even the first 10 words out of that teacher's mouth was, I thought your son was mute. Let me repeat that. I thought your son was mute. I bit my tongue and I held my hands on my lap. I was never, ever so pissed off. So to hear anybody sit there and say that there's no need for children to have speech therapy or early intervention at that age, that's wrong.
Well, no one's saying that though. Let's clarify that.
That's the gist that I got out of last night's school board meeting.
That's not.
That they went from a half resource to a full resource and couldn't consider the argument or the discussion for the other half resource. So you know what? Everybody says, yeah, she upped it to 1. Well, obviously Jody felt the need to bring in a full-time resource. Mm-hmm. And she probably didn't push for 2 full-times because she didn't want to upset the budget.
I can't speak to that. I can only tell you that I trust Jody. She's very, very, very careful. And she did say to me that she felt like changing to, her proposal was what she felt that she needed. The first thing I want to clarify, Jim, is that I feel that kids at that young age definitely need speech and language. I just want to be clear about that. And as I said earlier, this was a difficult decision for Jody. So if the BudCom chooses to add the speech and language therapist back in, we'll certainly, utilize the resources and be grateful for them. If you're asking me as the superintendent, do you need it to run the district? I have to go with what Jody has shared, which is that she felt that increasing the part-time person was increasing the aid to full-time was the right decision. We all have feelings about these things. And my son benefited dramatically from speech and language. It was really great for him, my youngest son, and it made a huge difference. He was right on that edge, unintelligible, but frustrated, really angry, and it worked. Rick, I really have empathy for this. So I think that what you guys need to do is decide what y'all want to do around this issue so that we can talk about the other ones.
Okay. Hey, Mary, you had a comment or question?
I just have a clarifying question. Speech services are part of special education, and it's driven by 504s and IEPs, correct?
Correct.
Driven by IEPs, yes.
So that if these plans are not in place and services are not needed, the way that I'm hearing comments, it sounds like everybody can benefit from speech, and they likely can. But what is our obligation? Is our obligation to serve just those students who have been identified with a need? And if that's the case, and Jody's saying she only needs 1 full-time assistant, then I trust her judgment. I'm going to stand firm on that. But if there's another school of thought that says, well, we should be doing more proactive screening, I'm not sure what the services here that this full-time person or this full-time and a half person are being asked to to do here?
Yeah, I think that the answer is that typically students have an IEP when they receive speech and language services. So I think that the question that Rick is asking is, if you had more, could you do more? And the answer is, of course, right? Do more, all kinds of things.
Yeah, I thought the answer was already that the person could be used 1 to 2 days at the high school because there already is a need there.
Yeah, I think that Jody was saying that if the position was added to the budget, that would be one of the places that she would allocate that resource if it was available. But again, I just need to be very clear. I trust Jody too. And if Jody says this is what she needs, we're having a needs versus wants discussion. And if you folks want to give the district some additional speech and language time, I'm not telling you that that's a wasted resource, because it's not. Right? There's always, it's an area of where Jody felt that there actually was a need. Jody added time to speech and language with her proposal. So I'm not going to say that it wasn't a need. Jody's saying that it was a need. It's the way you meet the need that we're really discussing. Do you want to do it with the assistant? And Dawn's point is what Dawn made for a point last night, which I think is worth noting, is that if you have another certified, fully certified speech and language pathologist, they can support that aide in doing their job. I think that's a legitimate argument. I mean, we could go for hours about this in circles. I think that Jody was saying that she needed more speech and language help, so she added a full-time aide instead of a part-time pathologist.
Yeah, so with respect to everybody else, I won't make any motions until we hear any other thoughts on any other additions.
Just want to clarify the impact on a budget would be $40,600 to bring on the part-time speech therapist.
Does that include benefits?
That was
Yes.
the total amount reduced by Jody, yes.
Okay.
At 0.1% of the budget.
What was the salary for the full-time? 85?
The full-time is already in the budget.
Right, that was 85,000.
No, the full-time assistant, Matt would have to get
58, I thought. I believe it was 58 if Matt's still on.
Yeah, Matt's right there.
And plus benefits brings it up to like 80.
The part-time speech position, I believe it included benefits at 40,600.
Okay.
That would be the addition here. So the reason I asked about the savings earlier on, and I know, like, we were saying it's hey, we're giving over $1 million back to the taxpayers because that's what we said we were going to do. We would still be doing that by adding this person. And I think, speech is such an important part of the learning process and the growing process and the communication process that you can't talk about any kind of proficiency in anything if somebody can't communicate effectively. Forget math, forget SATs, forget it. Forget proficiency. Without communication, it doesn't exist.
Maura,
So
did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment. The scope of what we're talking about here. I think on a $300,000 home, the tax impact for this speech pathologist, we're talking about $9 for a $300,000 home in Kingston and $12 for a $300,000 home in Newton. So it's just not really a very big tax impact. It's obviously very well needed. I think Rick made a really great point. I just kind of want to bring in from a fiscal point too. It's kind of a minimal amount of money. Just wanted to put in that context. So.
And hopefully it would increase our SAT scores to greater than the 20%.
Oh, God.
So we'll leave this subject, very touchy subject, as one of the items to come back and review. And we are looking at a $40,600 addition to the budget if it passes. All right. So, Christine, how are you?
Good. I choose to decline on commenting until I hear the other issues at hand.
Okay.
But at this point, I would go with the administration.
Okay.
What they're recommending.
All right. Vanessa?
I wanted to talk a little bit about the para positions. So the reduction for the 4 para positions, I have some grave concerns with that, the special ed paras. I would like to maybe have a discussion regarding maybe compromising and maybe putting 2 paras back into the budget. I think that intervention is not fully implemented right now, and I'm concerned. I'd like to see intervention implemented and sort of let the dust settle on that a little bit before we decide to cut staff that would essentially, support students that are prime candidates for intervention support. After, the current year of COVID, I have concerns about the number of students that were once considered to be borderline for IEP plans now would be more likely in need of these services, and we'll find ourselves in a position where we could be understaffed to support them. I have to, from a personal standpoint, I have grave concerns with our lack of ability as a district to offer the appropriate IEP needs of our current students. This year with staff shortages and whatnot, but, before COVID, this was a concern. And there's students right now that aren't getting the one-on-one support that they're legally allotted or responsible or allowed to get, with current IEPs. And, I think that if we just reduce the staff too much, we could potentially open up ourselves to possible litigation. I think we have to think fiscally responsible in that respect. If we reduce the staff too much, are we gonna, and folks, parents aren't happy with the IEP support that their students are getting, are they going to potentially consider to bring lawsuits? I really think that that's something that we have to be concerned about. From a personal standpoint, I have a son in 11th grade who is on a 504 plan and has been since 3rd grade. He's in 11th grade at the high school, and his 504 plan has not been updated since middle school. So don't tell me that we have adequate support right now for special ed paras when my son can't even get his 504 plan updated in the last 3 years. So I mean, those are things that really alarm me when I hear a reduction of 4 para staff. And I think it's something that we should discuss as a team and decide, are we doing any justice to our students by cutting so many so quickly when we're looking to bring up test scores, we're looking to add intervention, they all play together, reassess it, let the dust settle, let intervention roll out, see where our students are, see what our needs are, and then reassess it. Don't preliminary cut it before you have the chance to allow intervention to really play out, see how it works for the district and see what your needs are. We haven't been able to, we've implemented, we've budgeted for it, but unfortunately, due to COVID, we haven't been able to let it play out. And I don't know how it's going to work out. I would like to see us be a little bit more conservative in that respect. So that's me.
We had 2 at the same time. We'll go with Matt.
I just want to point out that adding back two para positions would total $92,041.52.
Okay. 92,000. What was it again, Matt? I'm sorry. 92,000.
$92,041.52.
Okay. Thank you.
That includes all benefits.
That's everything. Okay.
Yeah.
And what would do you know what the tax impact would be for that, or? Sorry. Put you on the spot.
Yeah.
That's all right. We can come back to it.
We can get back to that, Matt.
Yeah.
Annie, I believe you had a comment, question?
I did. One comment on what Vanessa had to say is that kids who are on IEPs are not the prime candidates for intervention. They're getting help. It's the kids who are neither on IEPs or borderline getting ready to be on, and maybe intervention could keep them from having to be on. And other kids who have fallen behind, and to help them catch up. It's really not the prime candidates of the kids with IEPs, according to all the presentations that have been made over the last couple of years about this. The second thing is, I got to come back to I trust Jody. If she says that this is what she does, where she is, maybe kids have moved on and are graduating this year and there's not a need for them. I don't know where, how they are. None of us know the distribution of where all the kids are and where, what their needs are and what their IEPs are. Jody does. And I totally trust her to have made a good recommendation that is going to be responsible to take care of our kids.
Okay. Tom?
I just wanted to mention that the 4 paras being reduced are completely separate from the intervention. The intervention program is completely funded in the budget. 2 teachers at Memorial, 2 teachers at Bakey, and 2 teachers at the middle school, 1 each for math and reading, 5 paras at Bakey, 4 at Memorial, and 3 at the middle school. I'm sorry, 3 at Memorial and 3 at the middle school. So I don't want anyone to think that it's easy to confuse the cuts when the word para comes up. I had a bunch of parents, and I'm not saying this for your benefit, Vanessa, I'm saying it for the public, because people have emailed me and asked me, why are you cutting intervention paras? And we're not. This is Jody's special ed department based on IEPs. And the 4 cuts, people also think for some reason that the 4 cuts are from one building. They're not, they're district wide. So Jody, this is not, when you ask me about the speech and language pathologist, Jody, that's been an ongoing conversation for Jody and I for about 1.5 years, 2 years. This para thing was not, I trust Jody completely. She's okay with it. But I'm not gonna sit here as a superintendent and say, oh, if you want to add 2 paras back that we can't use services. I mean, you can always use more staff when you're running a district, but do we need them to run the district? This is a needs-based budget. And Jody did not feel that she needed them to run the district. And I also, Vanessa, just want to say that if there are issues with your child's 504, please let me know, let your building principal know. They are completely unrelated. Paras do not work usually on 504s. So I just want to be clear that that's a separate issue that we're happy to help you with, right? But for the public's confusion, I don't want them to think that 504 services are going to change as the result of a change in paraprofessionals. They're completely unrelated topics.
Okay. So I just want to say, I understand, I have concerns with COVID this year and the setback that some students are going to have, and the fact that we haven't been able to roll out intervention. And like I said before, some of those kids that are borderline are going to end up needing additional support. I think that, and I feel like I have a good enough pulse on the community, being a parent, having kids in 3 different grade levels, middle school, high school, and elementary school. And I do think that we are not adequately addressing IEPs the way that we need to be, and cutting these paras would directly affect that. So whether or not it plays into the 504, I know that they don't write 504s, but I'm sure that they help with 504 plans. But
yeah,
in terms of IEPs and that type of support, I think that we're going to get ourselves in some trouble if we make too many reductions in that department, given the pulse in the community and what I hear right now.
Matt?
It's 6 cents per thousand for the tax rate.
Thank you.
Vanessa, you all set?
Yeah, that
Okay.
was it for now. Yeah.
Laura? Laura?
You're mute.
You're on mute.
Sorry. I don't really have anything to add. I kind of agree with a lot of Vanessa's sentiments, and I've kind of already expressed some of my opinion, so I don't have anything else.
Okay. So I said I'd go last. Earlier on, Tom, you mentioned that you were looking to add, or you did add $20,000 into the budget regarding some more office space. What I did not prepare for this yesterday for this question.
Okay.
What is that space going to be used for? And seeing you guys, I see everybody doing all these calculations for the number of students and student per teacher. and classroom sizes and such, why wasn't the amount of office space requirement seen last year when you got the office down
Yeah,
in
good question. Yeah.
Carriagetown district, and what is it going to alleviate, and why do we need it? Why? I'm not getting another $20,000. I don't see a need for another $20,000 for storage space, or what's going in there? What's it going to be used for?
Thanks for asking. The great question. You can see we had a slide in my budget presentation for what happened is that the gentleman that rents the lower part of the building that we're in right now is vacating that space. So the space wasn't available, Jim. That's why it hasn't come up before. So the below us, the EMT services for the community are run out of the bottom half of the building that the SAU is currently housed in. And so that space came up for rent about 3 months ago. And so we talked to the landlord and asked him what he would want for rent. And it was about $20,000 a year, including heat, hot water, and electricity. And what we found is that with the district reorganized, that it's harder to find meeting space for any kind of district meetings or special ed. And so Jody's office the special ed department would go downstairs and occupy that space. And I think, Matt, can you pull up the slide from the budget presentation that outlined what the team worked on a narrative for that, Jim, and it was part of it. So I just wanted to review it quickly.
Sure.
Let me see if I have the slide presentation here, but so let's see. How that one.
There was a slide describing the central office, or was that in the budget questions, Matt?
It was.
It was in the budget questions. I'm not going to go through all 93 budget questions. You can stop screen sharing, Matt. I forgot which presentation it was, but I'll look it up while we're all talking and share it during the deliberation phase, Jim. But the answer is the space wasn't available and it became available. And it would certainly be very, very helpful for the facilitation of the district-wide meetings and things that need to occur. But it would, to answer the question directly, special education would be housed in that area of the Church Street property.
Vanessa?
So where are, so you said what the redistricting was, most of the meetings at the middle school level, and that's why there's a lack of meeting space now, or?
No, it was that we always had a couple of extra classrooms open at the high school, and this year there's almost none. It's really hard to find space for groups of people to meet, and certainly it's not helped by social distancing, right? So for the first part of the year, we were meeting on the stage at the high school because we could socially distance meetings there. But the reality is that, we moved a whole school inside of another school. It did tie up a lot of space. You have to remember that it's one thing to have a building built for 1,100 or 1,000 people and run it the way it was designed. It's another thing to put an entire second organization in a building and create space for that, because the building was designed for one main office. Now we have two. We had a guidance suite in the office. Now we had to use other office space for guidance. Nursing is doubled up down in the nurse's office, but moving the middle school into the high school, it is less efficient when you move a school into a building that was created for another school. So space has been tight, and we felt that for $20,000, considering that it included heat, hot water, and taxes, it was a really good deal.
Matt?
Two other points that I brought up. One of them was it makes it a discrete entry for people who are serviced by special education. So say, for example, you're sitting in the waiting room waiting for Tom for a meeting, and a special education person comes in or needing service, they're going to be walking by you waiting for Tom. So it makes it more discreet. Okay, that's number one. Number two is it's in a separate section of the building, and it's not contiguous with our office space right now. So it sets up more of a secured space where right now, when they go home at night, they just lock off their wing, and we just don't have access to it. This is just much greater security. That's it.
Okay. So I'm not comfortable with spending the extra money on it. Even though this is, what I'm seeing is driven by, majority of the reason is driven by a COVID issue. Is this would be something that you intend to continue to use for year after year, is that correct?
Well, yeah, we're saying that the bottom half of the building has become available, and our lease is 3 more years, so we would plan to lease it for 3 more years.
So
it's
it's $20,000 each year.
Yep.
Vanessa, did I see you with the hand up?
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to I'm sorry. I don't remember. Honestly, I don't. If it comes back, I'll raise it. I'm sorry.
And so a security issue or a personal feeling issue is something that you feel that this addresses as well. Well, I'd like to address the personal issue. I believe that somebody could be meeting with you in one of the auditoriums at the school, either one of the schools, gymnasium or something, and have complete privacy, entering and exiting the building.
You don't understand what we're saying is that during the school day, Jim, just let me clarify. There are a lot of meetings that happen during the school day.
Mm-hmm. I know.
And that's what we're saying. And I certainly just want to be clear with people. This was a tough decision for us to even decide whether or not to put this in the budget. But we felt that for the special ed department to move downstairs and have their own entrance to the building adjacent to the parking lot and to have meeting space for confidential meetings was worth $20,000, considering that everything's included. I'm not even going to sit here and waste time defending this because it's $20,000. If you guys vote to take it out, we'll go back to the board and talk about it. That's what it is, right? It is what it is. But I'm not going to get into the specifics of I'm not going to hold confidential admin team meetings in a gym at the school during the day. The kids are in the gym having gym class. This isn't just about COVID. It was a concern prior to COVID. And so we put it in the budget. And if you guys decide to take it out, we understand and accept that. We'll bring the budget back to the board and have that conversation at the board.
Okay. Rick?
Yeah, just to be clear, I think if we take a few steps back, I think the space was required because we shut down a middle school to save money, and we moved the offices from the high school to the Carriagetown facility. Am I not correct there?
Yes, we got an incredible deal on that.
So I think you got to weigh out, and I'm not saying I'm for or against it right now, but I'm thinking you got to say, we shut down a school, right, to save a big chunk of change, to potentially maybe spend 20 grand so we can have a secure meeting place.
Right. It's a very, in the scope of the budget, Rick, it goes back to your point before. The cost for the Carriagetown office total right now without that 20,000 is only $58,000 a year, which includes heat, hot water, electricity, and taxes. The guys gave it to us really at a very fair rate. For the amount of people that it services and what we get for it, I feel like it's a fantastic deal, but that's an opinion and we all have our opinions, and that's what this process is all about.
I'm still not letting it go. I get asked this one more question. What about investing $20,000 into the middle school that we shut down that we're currently renting to a tenant to create the same secure environment that you're looking at the Carriagetown building?
Well, if you wanted me to convert, well, first of all, the middle school's rented, so I can't change. That's already done. They put a tremendous amount of money into that building, and they're there for years. So
I thought that was a portion of the building.
Yeah, it's a large portion. It's the whole front half. So in order to repurpose the other half of the middle school, I haven't investigated what those costs would be. I think that when we discussed it, Matt and I early on, the investment of having the Carriagetown property was far more cost effective than trying to repurpose the building. I know that the SLC put how much into it, Matt? 500,000?
Yeah, or
up
great.
and running for their part. And you got to understand, there's a lot of people crammed into that Church Street building. We have the entire special ed department, all of the business office, HR, myself, all of tech. The district-wide tech department is completely housed at Church Street. It's not, I think folks think it's just the central office. It's a lot of people because the tech department had a huge room on the seminary campus that has now gone away.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it's not a small amount of people. So I don't know the answer to your question, Jim, but I can assure you that it's a lot more than $50,000 or $60,000 to convert the back half of the middle school into office space. I mean, you're talking about a lot of construction, walls, doors, networking, windows. It's a big deal, right? And so
Right, on a building that the previous administration let fall apart.
yeah, that's the
So
process.
that sticks us with leaving that building and going and renting property someplace else down the street for the next 3 years to the sum of $70,000 total. No, yeah, three more years at so
Yeah, hey Jim, you know, I get you. I
$200,000
agree.
over the next 3 years.
Yeah.
I
Here.
don't like the way it sounds.
That's okay. I disagree with you, but we're all
I
right.
understand.
Yep.
We can agree to disagree.
Happens all the time.
All right. So I guess that's the last of our comments for the proposed budget. Rick,
So
Rick?
if there's no more, you can hear me, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So if there isn't any other comments, I'd like to make a motion to add in the $40,600 for the part-time speech pathologist.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All right. Okay, so all right, so Judy sees who's motioning and seconding with
I
this.
missed it. Was it Maura who seconded?
No, Vanessa.
Vanessa, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, so vote on this. We'll start off with Annie.
Any discussion, any further
and-
discussion first?
Any further discussions?
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to just say that I'm very torn about this. I had 2 kids out of my 4 who had speech pathology also, and it definitely made a difference in their lives. One of them ended up as a CEO of a major company. I mean, you know, it made a difference. It helped them with their success. At the same time, I'm very concerned. I have 2 things. One is that the budget as proposed contains an increase in speech pathology services for kids. Number 2, Jody would love to have more, but she doesn't need it. And number 3, we've got COVID and we've got families in trouble and we have a staff contract. I don't want to tip the balance where people are going to punish our staff contracts because we added back stuff that is not a need. So I'm going to have to come down on the side of not doing this year. But you know, if Jody finds she has a need, she can suggest it for next year.
And just a point of clarification, and Matt, you can help me out if you like. Just could you give me the tax impact again for the $40,000? 40,600.
Yeah.
How many cents it is?
40.
Try like, I don't know, what, 3 cents roughly? I'll let you do the math.
3 cents.
3 cents? Okay. Yeah. So, understand COVID, understand people are struggling, but I think they'd be struggling a lot more if they don't understand what their kids are trying to tell them.
Mary?
And Jody said that she's going to be able to deliver the services.
She also said that the people could be used at the high school 1 to 2 days per week.
Mary?
Thank you. I watched the video of last night's school board meeting, and at one point they went over the revolving funds balance as of the end of October, the end of the third quarter of 2020. And there are balances in both the special ed fund, reserve fund, 241,000 and change, and the unanticipated education expense fund of 150,000 and change. And could we not tap those in the event that there is a sudden change in the needs and the screening and the assessed diagnoses of the need of our students? Is there any rush to add it on the front end if it's not needed? Can we rely on the fact that both that special ed and or the unanticipated education funds exist for that purpose should we need it?
The unanticipated education fund, as I remember it correctly, Matt, is the one that we would use if we had a classroom teacher that we needed to fill without notice. So for example, if those second grade numbers in Bakey bubbled up, right? The special ed fund is the one that we would use if we needed to hire for the purpose that you just outlined, Mary. That's the purpose of those funds. Typically, we hold those funds a little bit close because out of district placements can be exorbitant. And if we get a student that, and if a student moves in that has an out of district placement, that's one of those areas of the budget that I would consider to be relatively volatile. They go way up and then they can go way down depending on when students live or don't live in the district. So the answer is yes, but I use those funds very sparingly because I'm saving them for a real scary situation.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Okay, go ahead with the vote. Annie?
Going to vote no.
Okay. Mary?
No.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Maura?
Yes.
Rick?
Absolutely, yes.
I'm a yes. Christine?
No to go along with the administration.
Okay. Tammy?
No.
Okay. We got one. What did that, I'm sorry, how did that come out?
3 nays.
4 to 4.
4 to 4.
Noes and
4 to
4
4.
yes.
So, the situation here.
Does Tammy get a vote?
Yes.
Is that, I don't mean that to sound like that, but I didn't know, can we have a tie?
Yes, I'm a member of the committee. I get a vote.
Okay, I didn't realize that we could end in a tie.
Yeah, well, when it's a tie, it fails.
A tie means,
Okay.
yeah.
The RSA
Okay.
is really weird on that. It's the number of the school board plus 1 is what the budget committee has to be done. So if the school board is an odd number, the budget committee is always going to be an even number. And the school board member is a full voting member of the budget committee.
Okay,
Correct.
I was thinking it had to be an odd number. Okay.
It's really set up weird. It ought to be changed.
Okay, so the speech assistance was a no pass. All right.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion.
What
I'd
is
like
it?
to make a motion that we add $3,000 for SOROC as a new line item.
I'll second that motion. Judy, Vanessa seconded.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was
Any
for $3,000.
discussions on that? No?
I would like to ask one question.
Mary?
I know that Annie mentioned that Charlotte Scott has had to go back to the individual towns that are served by SOROC and ask them to put forth citizens petitions on their town warrants to raise the money. And I think she got all except for one town which turned it down. I forget which one it was. But she was still very tight. Do we know does she intend to do that again this year, whether or not this money is appropriated or designated through the budgeting process?
I can answer that. I can't remember which town it was that turned it down. I know that Kingston,
Hampstead or something.
Yeah, Kingston cut half of it. Actually, Atkinson gave her more. Kingston cut half of what she asked for. She asked for $1 per citizen. All the towns are putting it on with the Board of Selectmen putting on new warrant articles again, except for Kingston, which needs a citizen warrant article. They're not doing it themselves. They want the citizens to put it on. Oh, and also she didn't get to Fremont in time, so she didn't get Fremont to be a part of it last year. She is going to Fremont this year.
Thank you.
Okay. So, votes for this?
Oh, can I just,
Oh, Tammy?
that was $3,000?
Yes, yes.
And I just want to comment, as I said before, I've known Charlotte Scott for quite a long time. I spoke in favor of her motion actually at the town deliberative. And I would be definitely in favor of this. I'm going to abstain, like I said, because I think my rule is not to add stuff to the budget. But I would definitely support that.
And one more thing, I bet when we have a reconciliation, if we pass this with the school board, they'll accept it, I think.
Support it at the school board.
Can I ask a question?
How is it that, hold on, Vanessa.
I'm sorry.
How is it that Tammy just made the statement that she isn't going to vote to add something to the budget, but she just voted against?
My role as a school board representative is to support the budget that the school board gave to me to present to you. That is how I believe my role to be. So I don't believe I can support adding or subtracting. I have to support the budget that was presented to me to present to you. But I am a voting member of this committee by RSA, I believe.
And Jim, if you need an answer to that question, call me after the meeting and I'll explain it to you.
Will do, Rick. Okay, so votes for this, Solrock, Annie,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
Vanessa,
Aye.
Maura,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
aye. Christine
Aye.
and Tammy.
I abstain.
All right. So that's passed.
You said aye. You didn't abstain.
I'm sorry, what?
She said aye, she didn't abstain.
Oh, yeah.
I said I abstain. I say.
All right. So the two para positions, we have a little discussion on those again.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I want to put a motion to retain two special ed para positions at the tune of, where did I write it down? $92,041.52.
Second,
Who seconded that, please?
Jim McCarthy.
Thank you.
Is the motion to retain or to add them back?
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess it's to add them back technically because they're removed. So it would be added back. Thank you, Mary.
do we need to go through the motion and then second that again, or are we good?
Could you just give me the dollar amount on that again?
$92,041.52.
92.41.
52.
Annie?
I just want to make an observation that if this were to pass, it would make the proposed budget higher than the default budget at the polls.
Actually, it would be added to both.
No.
Correct.
No, it wouldn't. It's a
No.
pre-existing position, isn't it?
No, only the school board can add that back to the default budget. It's the school board that makes a decision on the default budget, not the budget committee.
Oh, that's right. Thank you, Annie and Matt. I forgot about that, the way that works. Yep.
The same
And just
thing-
for clarification, the Repeat that again, Annie, if you don't mind.
Yeah, right now, the default budget is about $50,000 higher than the proposed operating budget.
Mhm.
If this were to be increased by 92,000, it would make this higher, the operating budget higher than the default budget. Historically, what happens at the polls is the lower of the two budgets has passed. Just a point of observation.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So, start the voting. Annie?
No,
Mary? Mary, yay, nay?
Well, I'm sorry.
We're voting on
faded
the
in and out.
two para positions.
Sorry, you faded out on sound. We're voting on the paras.
The two
No.
para positions. No?
I'm gonna trust Jody.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Maura?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Christine?
Yes.
Tammy?
No.
Okay, well,
Sorry, I'm sorry, Tam, did you say you abstain?
No, I said
said-
no.
no.
Oh, okay. I
said
didn't hear
no.
you correctly.
All right, so the yays have it with 5, the noes have it with 3. I mean, the noes are at 3. So that passed. I'm going to pull back my idea to make that motion to reduce the budget by $20,000 based on your explanation of your requirements for privacy. I do want to know more about what the plans are for this in the future, because I can't see spending $70,000 a year for the next 5-6 years down there at Carriagetown Plaza when we have a building sitting there.
It's
So-
really a school board decision, but yes, I mean, if the board directs me to research what it would cost to convert the back half of the middle school into offices, that's perfectly fine. But frankly, we're not going to have that discussion until we know whether or not Fremont is staying in the district. Because if Fremont leaves the district, we're going to have a lot of space.
Yep.
And we'll know that in the next year or two. So really, Jim, to just to be transparent, our plan is to wait and see what Fremont does. So hopefully we'll know in the next couple of years what they're doing. And then once they make a decision, we'll figure it out from there.
All right.
I don't think that the central office will stay at, the only way central office would stay at Carriagetown long-term is if Fremont stays in the district and our enrollments flatten out. We recognize that if our enrollments continue to decline and they decline dramatically, that there would be more space even within the Baker High School campus again.
Okay. All right. So, Dan is, all right. We all set with the budget. Anybody, anything else? Tammy?
Yeah, Matt, can you confirm the total if you have it?
Yes.
Okay.
That-
You ready?
yes.
$35,565,325.80.
yeah, that's what I have too. Thank you.
I'm going to say that again. $35,565,325.80.
I
Okay.
just want to say that if you made your motion and if we passed a motion to add 1 para instead of 2, it would be closer to the default. I would have a lot better, I'd really love to revisit that.
I don't want to amend the motion. I felt like 2 is a compromise. I'd really like to, honestly, I'd love to stick with 4, but.
Well, there's another stage, right? Which is that this budget now goes back to the board because you've increased the budget.
Yeah.
And the board will vote on it. And one thing that may happen is the board may say, you know, we'd like to have a unified budget between the board and the BudCom, and they may ask to adjust a little bit. And
Yeah.
so we really try to bring the voters a unified budget between the two groups when we can, because it really helps us. So I'll talk with the board chair and figure out when our next meeting is on the 16th. And I'll be in touch, Jim McCarthy, I'll be in touch about what to do next, okay?
Yeah, and if I could just make a comment on that, Tom, real quick. They had the full availability to discuss that last night. They chose not to.
Thank you.
And then that was visible to the voters, and it was disgusting, and they all chose not to discuss it. So
Thank you.
hopefully, if they want to have a unified budget, be transparent to this community and the students and the parents pay the taxes here, and maybe they'll open their mouths and raise their hands in second motions and discuss things.
Thank you, Rick. So I think that the next step is this budget goes back to the board for consideration. And one thing we've done in the past is we've had a joint meeting, but it's really close, the two budgets at this point. We're really, what's the difference, Matt? I think that we just added less than $100,000.
About 95,000.
Yeah. So I'll work with the board chair and figure out a next step, and Jim, I'll be in touch. But the process technically at this point is that the board will deliberate your adjustment at the next meeting.
All right.
On the 16th.
Okay, so we're all done with that portion. All right.
Should we vote on our, just to close it up, should we vote on the total budget number? Because that's really what we present is the whole budget, not pieces
Oh,
of it.
yes, you do need to do that, I believe, right, Matt Angel?
So may I make a motion that we approve a budget of $35,565,325
Yes.
and 80 cents
Yes.
to recommend to the public.
Second.
Jim was the second.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Start the votes. Annie?
I'm voting no.
Can I ask a
Mary?
question? I'm sorry. Can I ask a question before you started voting? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Because it didn't go to discussion. I didn't know if it had to. So we have to vote on the total amount of the actual, so this is like part of the process. And because it's different, Tammy now needs to abstain because she can't vote to bring it up or bring it down.
No, Tammy has a vote on all matters. She's
Okay.
a member of this committee. What
Okay.
I think people are confused about is that the board adopted the budget, and typically the board member on the BudCom will support what the board put forward. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So but I guess what I'm trying to get across is if the total amount is different, she's going to vote against the total amount. So where does the school, I'm sorry, am I misinterpreting it?
No, you're interpreting correctly. If there's a change, if we increase the budget based upon our actions like we did this evening, Tammy's going to be an automatic no. That is her role. Her role is to come and vote for the monies that the school board gave to us.
So what happens in a circumstance where we all vote to add money to it, but then we don't agree? So we don't agree on the total amount, like what then happens? I'm just trying to understand this next process.
That shouldn't happen. Like if you gridlock and it fails, Matt, what would happen?
You're gonna have to vote on something. Something has to pass because it comes out
Correct.
and goes to the
Yeah.
taxpayers.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to
Like,
understand.
You're
No,
gonna
great
I mean,
question.
deliberate.
Okay.
long.
Okay, I mean, I get that it shouldn't based on what we just voted on, but I get it. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, Laura?
Trying to understand.
Okay. Yes.
I'm sorry. Oh, you had your hand up. I thought you had a question.
Oh, sorry. No, I thought you were asking me to vote.
Okay. Mary, do you have a question?
You're muted, Mary.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry, I had traffic going by. I know in the past, the next steps have been, as Tom suggested, to have another joint meeting to try to negotiate or come to consensus as a governing set of boards to put.
You froze up, Mary. We missed you, Mary. You froze up on our screens.
Sorry.
You're back.
We don't have to be in consensus, the budget committee and the school board. In the past, we have put forth separate numbers, one recommended by the budget committee and one approved by the school board. Ours is the one that counts and matters, but it will show dissent when it goes to the first deliberative. Is that correct?
That is correct. It will show, right, we try, again, I said we try, it doesn't have to be, but we've
Right.
worked hard in the past to try to get there, and we may not get there, that's okay.
And what we send back to the school board, they can appeal to us, and rightly so should appeal to find that middle ground.
That is correct. The school board may appeal to you, but the school board also could theoretically say, we don't agree with the BudCom's budget. This is what we would recommend, and that could be shown on the warrant, but I don't want to get into I don't think we're going to end up there. We've always worked collaboratively and figured it out. I like to focus on positives and trying to make this work. I think that we'll be able to bring this back to the board and figure out a middle ground. The board may just adopt it too. The board may say, you know, fine. I think the question that really vexes me with this process is about what I don't want is the default budget, because the default budget is a mess. It really does not align with programming. It's really challenging. And I don't want to see the default budget pass over $50,000 because it's $50,000 lower. You know what I'm saying? So I'm wondering about that, and I just need to think about that. But on the other hand, I mean, the will of the voters is the will of the voters. I just want to be very careful about the default budget being lower than the operating budget with this budget, because when it's that close in money, the accounts and the alignment of everything is tricky.
Okay, well, can I make a comment? I think, you know, forward with this, and then if the school board wants to have a joint meeting, that would be great. You know, I'd love to discuss that with them. I think it would be good, so.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary.
So my vote
Sorry.
is no.
Was that Mary?
Yes,
No.
that's Mary. Vanessa?
Yes, my vote is yes.
Laura?
You're muted.
Yes.
Rick? You're muted.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Christine?
No.
Tammy?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so now
So-
we're at
Okay.
I'd like to make another motion. How much is the default budget? Matt?
$35,527,941.94.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend a budget of $35,525,941 and how many cents was that?
94 cents.
94 cents.
So you're recommending a budget that's $2,000 lower than the default.
Yes.
Okay.
And what's the difference between that and what was just a tied vote?
Basically, I'm saying one para.
So I just want to remind
Not
everyone.
2,000.
But the school board will decide how they spend the money. You know, I mean,
My point is
we
that
give them a number and they'll decide. If they decide they want 2 paras, then they'll put in 2 paras and they'll find the money someplace else. There'll be a line item transfer, or they'll create a budget in March, depending on what is approved at the polls. But I would very much like to have a proposed budget pass. So I want it to be a little bit lower than the default.
And I was just about to say to Vanessa, just so that she understands, and Vanessa, I know that you get this, but it's you know, when you're new to this process, it took me a little while to understand that the BudCom can adjust the total amount, but not the allocation of the money. So you added 90 some odd $1,000 to this budget. You didn't really fund 2 paras.
Yeah, no, I
Okay, well,
understood
just wanna
that.
make sure-
Yeah,
I just want to be transparent if we don't use the money that way later, right? Like,
yeah.
I understand your intent and your will, and I respect that, but
Mhm.
ultimately the school board has that authority.
Yeah, understood.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
I think we need a second.
What it turns out to be is that it will show that the voters, if they vote
Yeah.
what the
I'll
budget.
second it. I'll second it because you do need a second for discussion. Sorry, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rick.
It will show that the budget committee had looked for a certain outcome or a certain result in the school. And if the school board does or does not go with it, it weighs on them for when they come back up for election and how they felt about it.
That's correct, Jim. Thank you.
Same with
So-
BudCom members.
Yeah.
That, Annie?
I'm voting yes.
If this is, oh, are we taking votes or are we still
Are you
discussing?
calling a
No,
meeting?
we're still discussing.
Oh,
Sorry.
I was still discussing.
Yeah. I mean, if this is what it's gonna take to get some money back into the budget for paras, then, you know, I think this is what we need to do. You know, I'd love to see the full 2 positions funded, but obviously, that won't. And this is why I was questioning what happens here, because I had a feeling this is gonna happen. So yeah.
Annie, could you repeat the amount that you,
yes. $35,525,941.94,
thank you.
which is $2 lower than the default. $2,000 lower than the default.
Thank you.
Annie, were you motioning for that amount?
I did, yes.
Okay, can I second that?
No,
Rick-
Rick,
Rick-
did.
Rick already
Or
did.
we're not there yet?
No, Rick
Rick-
seconded it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry, I missed that.
Rick did, I just want a confirmation of the number.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get to the voting. Annie,
Aye.
Mary,
Yes,
Vanessa,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Rick.
Yes.
Yes for me. Christine,
Yes.
Tammy,
Matt, can I abstain on this or do I have to vote no? In the spirit of, unanimity. Do you know?
You're asking me?
According to your logic,
Yeah.
No,
A
then,
no vote wouldn't matter at this point.
yeah.
it would be nice if, I wouldn't mind, abstaining if it were, if that were
I think that
appropriate in the spirit of allowing you guys to have a unanimous, or the rest of the committee, but I will vote no if that is what you think I need to do. So
Well,
No,
Tom's commenting.
my vote is no.
Okay, but Tammy, before you do that, can I just say, I think that you, again, as I said to Vanessa earlier, typically the board member votes for the board's budget. But that doesn't mean that you have a vote on this committee. There were times when Larry voted yes or no, and it's what I'm trying to answer to you is that it's legal. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not, an implied mandate to support the board's budget. but you do have a vote, and I just want you to feel comfortable voting your conscience too.
No. I'll vote no.
Okay.
Oh, my logic.
So the yeas,
Okay.
the yeas have it with 7 and 1 no.
Thank
Okay.
you, everybody. It's really great to work with a group of people who think so carefully about, what we're doing and the responsibility we have. And, I appreciate you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so Dan, can we open this up for public comment if there are any people that wish to?
We don't do public comment on Zoom calls, Jim. They have to send them in to you ahead of time to read if you want to read them.
Oh,
We
so
don't-
there's, okay, all
There
right,
isn't a mechanism for public comment on a Zoom board meeting.
all right, understand.
What I do is I put the notice out and I say to everyone, please email me by noon, and then I read them at night.
All right. So, committee comment, Annie?
Already made one. Sorry, I was out of order.
Okay, Mary,
Comment?
Vanessa?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit, I'll just be honest, I think that I understand the numbers and the way that everything works out, but I would like to see more of a checks and balances in place between the two committees. I feel as if, there should be an odd number of people. Like, to me, that just seems weird that you can have an even vote. I don't know how you get around that. It just seems odd to me. You know what I mean? So I feel, I don't know, legally what you can do to make that an odd number. That would be something, and it's based on the school board numbers you had mentioned, right? So,
It's an RSA, so you have to talk to your legislature.
but just in terms of, maybe if we added a Fremont representative to the school board, then it, could offset this. So it's just something for folks to consider if we
Then
want
they'd have 8.
the district as well. Excuse
But
me.
then they'd have 8.
Yeah, but isn't the number here determined based on that number? Isn't that the way it was
Number
explained
plus
to you
1.
earlier? Huh?
Their number plus 1. It's in the
So how
RSA.
does? Okay, I guess I have to read it because I don't understand.
Yeah, Vanessa, if you'd like to talk about this, I'm happy to Matt and I could kind of show you how that works. We're happy to help.
Yeah, that'd be good. Okay, thank you. That's the only comment.
Maura, comment?
No.
Rick, any comments?
Yeah, quickly, I would just again like to express my disgust for the school board meeting last night and the lack of discussion over topics. And I would challenge everybody on this committee and the school board to second motions. So there's always discussion, and then you can vote how you want to vote. The lack of discussion is just in my opinion, just utterly disgusting. So that's it. Hope everybody has a good evening.
Okay. I'm myself, I'm kind of taken back that the SOROC passes, the paraposition passes to generate the $35,565,325.80 total by all these board members, and then when it comes time to vote for it, it is not passed. Just kind of strikes me that it can be brought up to that and then struck down. Then what else we have? Christine,
No comment.
and then Tammy.
No, thank
Did I get everybody? The screen moved around on me, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So our next scheduled meeting is Thursday, December 10th at 7 p.m. at the high school library.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I don't think we have to have another meeting. And what we need to do is we need to find out unless we are going to start preparing our slideshow, we're ready to do a budget. I guess the only thing we don't know is whether the school board's going to adopt our budget or want to fiddle with it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess we do.
But
Yeah.
one thing you could do is you could meet on the 17th, the night after the board meeting. That way you know what they're instead of meeting.
On second thought, we need to prepare to present our budget, and if it changes in negotiation with the school board, or if theirs changes, we'll just adjust the numbers. We still need to put together a presentation. So I think we should meet next week. I take back my comment.
Yeah. Okay. So we're not going to be able to approve a preliminary budget next week. Is that correct? Tom?
No, you just did. The question is, will the board approve and adopt your budget? And I think, frankly, I think the fact that it's a couple thousand lower than the default probably, I'm just guessing, but I think that we'll be in pretty good shape with that, but I can't guarantee anything. That's ultimately the board's decision.
Got it. Okay. Everybody all set?
Motion to adjourn.
Yep.
Somebody?
Second.
No, I can't motion.
Motion to adjourn.
I need a motion. How's that?
Okay,
motion
motion
to
to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Who's
I second it.
Rick seconded? Okay.
All right.
You guys are
Thank
too
you.
funny.